The ultimate family drama conflict. How I fought back. After losing everything in this powerful video, we dive deep into the emotional turmoil caused by family drama conflict. When betrayal runs deep and trust is broken, it feels like everything you've ever known is shattered. Join us as we explore a gripping story of a family's hidden turmoil and the journey to reclaim peace and dignity. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, Silent Wars, for more stories about overcoming family struggles and emotional healing. I had arrived home for Christmas, filled with the anticipation of reconnecting with my family. It was supposed to be a time of warmth, laughter, and love. But when I opened the front door, I was met with an eerie silence. The Christmas tree was lit, but the glow felt like a weak apology. There was no familiar hum of holiday cheer. The air didn't carry the comforting scent of cinnamon, gingerbread, or the rich aromas of holiday meals being prepared. The only sound was the soft clinking of a fork against a plate. "Hello?" I called out hesitantly, hoping for the familiar response of family bustle. But all I heard was a tired voice from the kitchen. "Come in, darling," it called. I turned the corner and saw her. Grandma. She sat alone at the kitchen table in her old cardigan, a plate of cold leftovers sitting in front of her. Her face was drawn, her eyes tired. The holiday magic was nowhere to be found in her presence. It was just me, standing in the doorway, and her, waiting silently as if this was just another ordinary night. "Where is everyone?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A part of me didn't want to hear the answer, but I needed to know. Grandma didn't respond right away. She simply slid a folded note across the table with trembling hands. My heart sank as I unfolded the note. It was from my parents. The words on the torn piece of paper felt like a punch to the gut. They had taken the $8,500 I had saved for my dental surgery, a surgery I had sacrificed so much for, used it to pay for a family cruise. The note simply read, "We're off on a cruise. Take care of Grandma. Love. Mom." I stared at the words, my mind struggling to process. That money wasn't just an amount, it was everything I had worked for. I had spent long hours working night shifts, sacrificing meals and sleep, all to make sure I could take care of myself. And now, it was gone. I could feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. Grandma looked at me with sorrowful eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "They didn't even think to call you. They took everything." I felt my stomach drop, but I didn't know what to say. My family, the ones I thought would always be there for me, had just shattered everything. Christmas, once a symbol of joy and togetherness, now felt like a hollow reminder of what had been taken. This wasn't the first time my parents had asked for money. Over the years, it had become a familiar pattern: emergencies that weren't really emergencies, requests for short-term loans that stretched on indefinitely. But this time, it felt different. This time, they had taken everything. They hadn't just borrowed a little money, they had wiped out everything I had worked for. I was left with nothing but an empty house and a frail grandmother whose health had been slipping for years. The weight of betrayal sat heavily on my chest as I stayed in that house alone that night. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the Christmas cheer that should have filled the air. I couldn't stop staring at the note in my hand, the note from my parents. The note that had destroyed everything I thought I knew about family. They were on a luxury cruise, a $3,000 per person escape to the Caribbean, while I was left behind to deal with the mess they had left me with. The entire family had disappeared, leaving behind only the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the cold remnants of the holiday dinner. I pulled out my phone and opened the family group chat, hoping for some kind of message, anything to make me feel like they cared. But there was nothing. No "Merry Christmas," no words of love or even acknowledgement that I existed. Just one single text from my mom, sent back in November, reminding me to send the loan money. That was it. The extent of our communication. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This was no longer about family. It wasn't about love or support. It was all business. And I had been nothing more than a bank for them to withdraw from when they needed it. The promises they made about paying me back, about the short-term loan they assured me would be returned, were now empty words, hollow promises. Those words echoed in my mind as I thought about everything I had sacrificed to help them, everything I had given up for them. And for what? It was a betrayal that cut deeper than I ever expected. I had always believed in the idea of family, that no matter what, family would stick together. But now I was left alone, with nothing but an empty house, a lonely grandmother, and the bitter truth that my parents didn't care. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I knew I had to do something. My parents had taken everything, and it wasn't just about the $8,500 they had stolen. It wasn't even about the broken promises, the empty words they'd thrown at me over the years. This was bigger. Much bigger. This was years of manipulation, of lies, and of me turning a blind eye because I felt obligated to help, to keep the peace, to always say yes when they asked for money. But not anymore. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to take control. Grandma and I stayed up late into the night, combing through bank statements, transaction receipts, emails, anything we could find that would shed light on the full extent of their betrayal. We pulled out every piece of paper, every shred of evidence that had been tucked away over the years, all the records that showed just how deep the lies ran. It wasn't just a simple misuse of money or a one-time mistake. What I was uncovering was something far more sinister, a pattern of deceit that stretched across years. My parents had taken from me, from Grandma, from everyone in the family, and I had been too blinded by guilt, too overwhelmed by the pressure to be the good child, to see it. I had always believed that family came first, that my duty was to help, to sacrifice. I never questioned it. I thought that by giving, by always saying yes, I was being a good son, a good brother, a good grandchild. But now I could see the truth. They had been using me, manipulating me, for their own gain. Every request for money had been a trap, every emergency an excuse to dig deeper into my savings. They had drained me emotionally and financially, and I had let them. But now I had the proof. We carefully pieced everything together, documenting every shady transaction, every broken promise. Grandma's hands trembled as she flipped through the old records, her eyes reflecting the years of neglect and heartache she'd endured. She had never asked for any of this. She had given everything for her family, and now they had left her behind. By the time they returned, expecting a warm welcome and a family reunion, I was ready. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. I wasn't going to play the role of the dutiful, silent victim. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. They came back like nothing had happened, their arrogance as thick as the Caribbean sun that had bathed them for days. My parents rolled in, dragging their luggage behind them, clearly satisfied with their lavish vacation. Mom, gliding in with her oversized sunglasses still on, barely spared me a glance. The first words out of her mouth were, "Did you even clean up a little?" As if she hadn't just abandoned me and Grandma to fend for ourselves. Emily, my sister, strutted in right behind her, all smiles, like she was just coming back from a fun-filled weekend, unaware, or rather, uncaring of the mess they had left in their wake. They didn't even acknowledge Grandma, who had been sitting there, waiting for some sign of warmth, some recognition of the years she'd spent caring for them. They were too busy being their usual selves, selfish, dismissive, and completely unaware of the damage they'd done. "Where's the food?" Mom asked, scanning the kitchen with a critical eye as if she owned the place. A cold, simmering anger started to rise in my chest. I could feel my fists clenching. I stood up, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. I wasn't going to be silent this time. "Sit down," I said, my voice calm, but with an edge they had never heard from me before. They exchanged confused glances, unsure of what to make of my sudden firmness. They clearly didn't understand the gravity of the situation, but I had been quiet long enough. I wasn't just going to let them walk in like nothing had changed. I clicked open my laptop, the screen lighting up with the evidence I had carefully compiled with Grandma over the past few days. The spreadsheet appeared before them, and I could see their eyes widen as they took in what they were seeing. Every single dollar taken from Grandma's pension, every ATM withdrawal made by Dad at the gas station, every payment made for their extravagant trip, all neatly laid out in front of them. "Where'd you get this?" Mom's voice had suddenly gone tight, a nervous edge creeping in. "From you," I said, my voice steady. "You should be more careful when using someone else's password." The truth hung in the air between us, undeniable and cold. I showed them everything: screenshots, emails, recordings. The moment I revealed the conversation between Emily and Mom, laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate me and Grandma, the silence in the room was deafening. They didn't know how to react. Their smugness started to crack, and for the first time, I could see their masks slipping. The tension in the room was palpable as I took a deep breath and reached into the pile of papers on the table. I knew this moment would come, and I had prepared for it. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the last trump card I had been holding back. A voice recording from Kelly, Jacob's wife, confessing everything. I hit play, and her voice filled the silence. "I've had enough. They've been pressuring me to keep quiet about everything, about what they've been doing with the money. I just couldn't take it anymore." She went on, describing how Jacob and Emily had manipulated me, how they had used their financial control to get whatever they wanted. I had known it all along, but hearing it from her mouth made everything real. I watched as their faces shifted. Jacob's eyes narrowed, and without warning, he lunged at me, fury boiling in his veins. "You recorded my wife?" he shouted, his face turning red with anger. The venom in his voice was unmistakable. "No," I said, my voice calm and steady, despite the storm raging inside me. "She asked me to. She's tired of lying for you." The room fell into a tense, suffocating silence as I finished speaking. I had laid it all out for them, and now there was no turning back. I wasn't the same person I had been when they took everything from me. I wasn't the quiet, obedient child anymore. I had become someone else. Someone who was finally going to fight back. "I'm sending everything to the authorities," I said, my voice unwavering. "You have 48 hours to return every penny, or this goes public." Emily's hands trembled as she looked at the evidence, her face going pale. "You can't be serious," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her own guilt. "I'm dead serious," I replied, staring them down. "You've all been stealing for years, and it's time you paid for it." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the weight of what I had just said settle over us. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about integrity, honesty, and the betrayal I had suffered at the hands of the people I once called family. I had spent years being their doormat, allowing them to take whatever they wanted without question. But that time was over. I wasn't afraid anymore, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The clock was ticking, and I knew that once I made this move, there would be no going back. But at that moment, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally out, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The next 24 hours were nothing but silence. There were no apologies, no acknowledgement of the devastation they had caused. No messages came through. It was just me and Grandma sitting in the quiet house, each of us dealing with the aftermath in our own way. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the bank account on my phone, watching the numbers that represented years of hard work and sacrifice. They were gone. Every penny had been drained, every promise broken. But I wasn't about to let that be the end of it. Grandma sat beside me, her frail hands clasped in her lap, her eyes distant. She didn't speak much, but I could tell she was processing everything. She had been through so much in her life, but this betrayal from the people she had given everything for was different, and it cut deep for both of us. But then, by the second day, the storm began. The messages started pouring in. Mom's first text came early in the morning. "Please take it down. We didn't mean for this to happen. We're family." It was followed by another, and then even more. She begged me to erase the post, to undo everything, but I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in their empty apologies anymore. They had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let them pretend it didn't happen. Jacob wasn't any better. His message was full of anger and guilt-tripping. "You're ruining the family. You're hurting all of us. Please stop." He blamed me, of course. They all did. They always blamed me for everything. But not this time. This time, I wasn't backing down. Instead of engaging with them, I forwarded every message to my attorney. I was done playing the role of the victim. I was ready to fight back. By noon that day, the legal battle had begun. My attorney started preparing everything we needed: documentation, evidence, and a strategy for going public. And then, it happened. In the following days, the story broke. The press picked it up, and soon the headline read, "Grandson fights back after family steals elderly woman's pension." The article went viral. My family's carefully cultivated image of a loving, tight-knit unit was shattered in an instant. The world now knew the truth about what they had done. The shame was out there for everyone to see, and they couldn't hide from it. What I had done was no longer just a family matter, it had become a public spectacle. And that, I realized, was exactly what they deserved. The truth had been exposed, and there was no going back. The silence that followed was no longer mine to hold. It was theirs. It wasn't long before Jacob showed up at my door, his face flushed with anger. His hands were balled into fists, and his jaw was clenched so tightly I thought it might crack. The moment he saw me, he didn't even bother with pleasantries. He just stormed in, his voice trembling with fury. "You've ruined everything," he spat, his words sharp like daggers. He was practically shaking with rage, his face red as a tomato. But there was no fear in my heart, only a steady resolve. I had come too far to let his theatrics work on me now. "No," I said, my voice calm, unwavering. I held out a legal letter and slid it across the table toward him. "You did." The words hung in the air like a challenge, daring him to deny the truth. The letter was the culmination of everything I had been working on for the past few days. The evidence, the recordings, the legal filings, it was all there. He couldn't run from it anymore. He couldn't manipulate the situation like he had done so many times before. Jacob stood there for a moment, staring at the letter. He didn't take it, didn't acknowledge it. But I could see the guilt creeping into his eyes, the realization that the game was over. They had all thought I would fold under the pressure, that I would cave in to their emotional manipulation. They thought they could guilt-trip me into backing down. But I had made up my mind. There was no going back. The money was returned. Every single cent. I watched the balance in my account slowly shift back to where it should have been all along. It felt surreal, like a weight was being lifted from my chest, but I wasn't done yet. I used part of the money to finally do something I had been putting off for far too long: my dental surgery. For years, I had sacrificed my health to help others. I had sacrificed my well-being, my time, my money, all in the name of family. But now I was taking care of myself for the first time in years. The rest of the money went towards something much more meaningful. I bought Grandma a proper lift chair and arranged for a home nurse to take care of her. After everything she had done for me, after the years of silent suffering, she deserved better than what she had been given. It wasn't much, but it was something that would make her life easier, something that would bring her a bit of comfort in her golden years. It was a small victory, but it was mine, and it felt like the first real victory I had ever had in my life. Months passed, but the echoes of that day still lingered in the air. My family tried to piece together the broken parts of their image, doing everything they could to erase the truth they had worked so hard to hide. They posted on social media, plastering their faces all over the internet, trying to salvage their reputation. But the truth was out there now. It couldn't be swept under the rug. Every time they attempted to rewrite the story, people reminded them of who they really were. The comments poured in, calling them out for what they had done, calling out their lies, their manipulation. And every time I saw their pathetic attempts to save face, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. The world knew now, and they couldn't escape it. I, on the other hand, had found a new sense of peace. I had left behind the chaos, the constant emotional turmoil, and the toxic grip they had on me for so long. I moved into a quiet apartment, far from their world of drama and manipulation. It was small, but it was mine. It was the first time in a long while that I felt a sense of control over my own life. The walls were bare at first, but I began to fill the space with things that truly mattered. Memories with Grandma, photographs of the two of us, small items that brought me comfort and reminded me of the person I was fighting to become. Grandma and I finally found a rhythm in our new life. We spent our days enjoying the simple pleasures we had missed. Quiet walks in the park, afternoons spent reading, and late-night talks about everything and nothing. It was peaceful. It was real. It was the life we deserved all along. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of guilt or the pressure to be someone I wasn't. And in that stillness, I realized something important. This battle wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even about the revenge, or getting back what they had stolen. It was about standing up for what was right. It was about reclaiming my dignity and taking control of my own life. It was about finally breaking free from the shackles they had tried to put on me, the shackles of obligation, guilt, and fear. No one could make me feel small anymore. Not my parents, not my brother, not anyone. I had stood up for myself, for the first time in my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. I was no longer the person they tried to make me. I was free. Years passed, and life slowly began to unfold in a way I had never imagined. I had moved on, carving out a life that was free from the chaos and manipulation that had once defined my existence. But sometimes, even after you think you've left the past behind, it has a way of catching up with you, offering you a moment to reflect on how far you've come. It was one of those moments when I ran into Kelly outside a small coffee shop. She looked different, healthier, lighter, and surprisingly happier. The woman standing before me wasn't the same person I had known years ago, the one trapped in the toxic cycle of lies and manipulation. She had changed, and it was evident in the way she carried herself. I couldn't help but smile when I saw her. I had almost forgotten how much her presence used to weigh on me, but seeing her now, in this peaceful state, filled me with a sense of quiet pride. She saw me too, and her face softened with gratitude. "Hey," she said, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "I just wanted to thank you for everything. You helped me break free from that cycle. I don't think I could have done it without you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had never really stopped to consider the ripple effect of my decision to stand up for myself, to expose the truth, to stop letting them control my life. In that moment, I realized that by taking that stand, I hadn't just changed my own life, I had changed hers too. Kelly had found her way out, just like I had. She was no longer weighed down by the emotional burden that my family had placed on her, and for the first time, she seemed free. Free from guilt, free from manipulation, and free from a life she never truly wanted. I smiled again, but this time it was more than just a polite gesture. It was a smile of understanding, a smile of knowing that my decision had meant more than I had originally realized. I had done something important, not just for myself, but for someone else too. And in doing so, I had finally freed myself from the emotional chains that had bound me for years. The chains that had kept me trapped in guilt and fear. The ones that had made me question my own worth. I had reclaimed my life, and so had she. As for my family, they tried their best to move on, to sweep everything under the rug and pretend like nothing had happened. They attempted to rebuild their lives, trying to return to the image of a happy family they once had. But no matter how hard they tried, the damage was done. There was no erasing what they had done. The truth was out there now, exposed for everyone to see, and no amount of false smiles or social media posts could change that. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I had said what I needed to say, and I had done what I needed to do. The truth had already made its way into the world, like a fire that couldn't be put out. My family could no longer hide behind their lies and manipulations. Their names were forever stained, and no matter how much they tried to rewrite the story, they couldn't take it back. The words were out there, and the world had heard them. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to justify my actions. I didn't have to sit there and defend my choices, trying to make them understand why I did what I did. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. The silence between us spoke volumes. I no longer sought their approval, their understanding, or their love. I had stopped waiting for them to change, and as hard as it was to admit, I had come to terms with the fact that they might never change. That was their burden to bear, not mine. What mattered now was me. What mattered was that I had broken free from the emotional chains that had kept me bound for years. I was no longer afraid of their lies or their manipulation. I wasn't afraid of their judgment or their criticism. I had fought for my dignity, and I had won. I had built a new family, one that wasn't defined by blood, but by love, respect, and honesty. These were the people who saw me for who I truly was, who accepted me without condition. They were the ones who cared for me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I felt like I had a place where I didn't have to pretend, where I didn't have to hide the parts of me that my family had never cared to understand. And with that, I found peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. I had reclaimed my life, my peace, and my dignity. And for the first time in years, I slept peacefully at night, knowing that I was free. Free to live, free to be myself, and free to move forward without looking back. In life, there comes a time when we must confront painful truths and take a stand for ourselves, even when it feels difficult. The message of reclaiming our dignity and peace is especially important as we grow older. Family, for better or worse, plays a significant role in shaping our lives, but it is essential to recognize that we are not bound by toxic relationships or manipulation. We have the power to break free from cycles of guilt, obligation, and emotional burden. Standing up for what is right, even in the face of adversity, is not only a form of self-respect, but also a way to find true peace within ourselves. It is never too late to prioritize our well-being and to surround ourselves with people who value love, honesty, and respect. By doing so, we create a life that reflects our true worth. free from the chains of past hurts. For the elderly, this lesson is particularly poignant. Our time is precious, and we deserve to live with joy, surrounded by those who cherish us for who we truly are. In the end, the greatest victory is not in wealth or revenge, but in finding peace within, knowing we've lived authentically and with integrity. Thank you for watching this video and for being part of our community. Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Silent Wars for more content like this. Don't miss out on our future videos filled with powerful lessons on family, love, and personal growth. See you in the next video.